So I'll start reading, and we'll cover this website. It's not a very long front page actually. So we'll read this. These are mostly questions, and there are selection criteria if somebody wants to go over them. But these were accepted in 2022. The book is out. Saurabh has reached out to Natalie, and yeah, if we can get hands on the book, that would be super amazing. I think the book will be very interesting. Yeah. So the name is Satoshi Papers. Even the name is very powerful. Reflections on political economy after Bitcoin. Call for papers. The world order inaugurated after the Second World War, an order which has shaped political and economic life for generations, is over. Not only that, but the past Cold War era, characterized by unipolar US superpower, is over. There are two powerful statements just at the beginning. So, the world order inaugurated after the Second World War, which is the Bretton Woods system, the petrodollar system, the US dollar monetary system, the removal of the gold standard in 1971, all of the history events which literally shapes everything in the world right now. So, and this order has shaped political and economic life for generations. It is over. It is over. Bitcoiners understand this. The second line is also powerful. Not only that, but the post Cold War era, characterized by unipolar US superpower, is over. So yeah, so not just like this will be covered in the following passages. It's not just that US dollar is failing, but the whole idea of unipolar power is failing. So there's no Russia or USSR or China competing to be the superpower of the world, because the world is a different place. There is no one superpower who will tell us what the worth of currency is anymore. We now live in a multipolar world. This world is characterized by the rise of multinational people and companies, new economic alliances across societies, and revitalized national projects and historical empires, all enabled through the industrial capacities, commodity wealth, and technological advantages, uniquely combining to carve out this new world. At the same time, the foundations of the nation state, the historical form embodying the principle of rule by the people, have come increasingly into question as entire populations debate the basis of political community and practices of representation. So, this is a mouthful. I'll actually read this again and we will break it down like one sentence at a time. So, we now live in a multipolar world. Um, else has joined. I'll just quickly check. XYZ Top. Hello, XYZ Top. You are muted. I don't know why you are muted. Uh, is that a conscious decision? Or should I unmute XYZ Top? Okay, I'll unmute you. Okay, he left. Okay, I know rest of you, so you can unmute yourself whenever you want. We now live in a multipolar world. This is true because there is no competitor to US dollar. China is doing its best. We are living through the massive trade war that history has ever seen. But yeah, I don't know. This is just my opinion for now. But China cannot create a world reserve currency. So that's like the concluding statement of how it can never be the superpower telling dictating another psychological operation like the US dollar system. This world is characterized by the rise of multinational people and companies, new economic alliances across societies, and revitalized national projects and historical empires, all enabled through the industrial capacities, commodity wealth, and technological advantages, uniquely combining to carve out this new world. I'd like to stress on these three components. So I think the rest of the sentence is pretty straightforward. So industrial capacities are becoming more and more democratized. Whatever can be produced in Melbourne can be produced in any city of India. So industrial capacities are becoming more and more easily accessible. So the scarcity element of demand and supply are making really cheap goods and services, which is also why I think a lot of people are not facing the brunt of inflation as much unless they really think about it. People like Bitcoiners, people who are economists, because of industrial capacities being democratized. So you have cheap glasses, cheap tables, cheap walls, cheap fans everywhere because it's easier to produce them. Commodity wealth. So commodity wealth. This is an interesting one, right? So like I don't know. If I should. Yeah. Did someone unmute themselves? Please feel free to share anything. Okay. Let me check. Okay, no one unmuted. Commodity wealth is an interesting one. I don't know if I should consider real estate as commodity wealth because it's debatable. You can't. It's not portable. It's not. divisible. It can't be transferred easily. So commodity wealth is more and more physical goods and which have monetary properties being valued. This is already true for gold. It's like historically it has always been true that whenever there is economic uncertainty, gold becomes more and more valuable, and more people custody more gold. More countries go after gold, and they don't want to settle their debt in other countries' promises or debt anymore. They want the physical commodity, and this is true for oil as well. I think these are the two major commodity reserve assets for nation states, and even for companies, I believe. And of course, Bitcoin is the new horse in the race, which is a digital asset of properties in commodity nature and technological advantages. This is the actual I think the breakthrough of 21st century, that more and more countries, companies, individuals, whoever, right, they are competing on technological advantages. They're not really competing on industrial capacities as much, at least, because there are deeply entrenched players in industrial sectors, and they are closely tied with the money printer. So it's very difficult for an entrepreneur to compete with them. Technological advantages is where they outshine everything else, because software and sovereign technologies are becoming more and more accessible, and this is how you can outbeat one individual can outbeat institutions. This is the level of insanity of change and transformation that we are living through, and they uniquely combine to carve out this new world. At the same time, the foundations of the nation state, the historical form embodying the principle of rule by the people, have come increasingly into question as entire populations debate the basis of political community and practices of representation. Nation state is a legal story, if I were to like really simplify it, because when we say India, when we say USA, those are physical borders drawn by human beings, and they are on earth. So it's not like existentially makes sense. What makes sense is control and exert of power over those boundaries, which are exercised by the nation state authorities. So these are the historical form that we are living through. There are currently like 197 nation state around the number, and most people, or at least most political theories, say that they are ruled by the people. So when I say I'm an Indian, you are an Indian, uh, India is our country, is our land, so we get a say over what rules dictate how Indians live, have come increasingly into question as so entire populations. Yeah, very interesting. Like, the debate has opened up so much that, yep, not just individuals who are critical thinkers, but I think even the average layman is at least realizing the pain, if not the cause of the pain of what's going on. Yeah, most people are unconscious about that, but I think on a human is off, and if they don't, they are living in their bubble, so they'll eventually find out. The American debate between the Federalists and Anti-Federalists, the social crucible which generated the U.S. Constitution and the founding institutions of the fledgling republic, appears to be gaining new relevance in this moment. Yeah, so the Federal and the Anti-Federalist, I think, to the best of my understanding, is the debate of the federal power versus the local unions and local states. So when Texas is claiming authority over Bitcoin mining sites, what they are saying is that regardless of what Donald Trump or the center of the U.S. Federal Reserve System or the federal system, U.S. legal system, dictates the authority or the law of the land, we are going to exercise our own rights, which are state bills. And like there's an interesting element of what's that guy's name? Satoshi Action Fund. There's an organization, Satoshi Action Fund, whose founder is a very controversial figure. He keeps on making announcement posts, but he's working closely with the state bills, working on state bills with the local states of USA, which is Texas. I think Texas has made headways into it because it's becoming a mining hub in the US. And regardless of what center does, the state bills are establishing rights to self custody, rights to Bitcoin mining. And Bitcoin Policy Institute is actually very critical of Satoshi Action Fund. David Zell has written a very elaborate article on how when the state comes attacking on self custody rights, state bills are not going to be effective as legal vehicles of defense. Yeah, but that's the debate that has opened up, right? That is it United States of America? It's like that's the summary of it. Is it United States of America or is it Texas? And I don't know the states of USA actually. Like there are 56 states. That's all I know. The social crucible which generated the US Constitution, and the founding institutions of the fledgling republic appears to be gaining new relevance in this moment. And if you watch her interview, it's a very short interview. I'll recommend if people are interested in the subject of Natalie with Bitcoin Magazine with Frank Corva recently. So she mentions that uh, the entire political foundation being questioned is important because the founders of the U.S. Republic, Jefferson envisioned that the political roles do not have to be full-time jobs. Nobody has to work in government full-time. It's a role to establish a system where it can execute without some authority being in power for long term. But yeah, it did work for a long period of time. U.S. Constitution is held to be one of the most uh, liberty-preserving legal documents in the world and in history. Yeah, it's breaking down. It's definitely it's a human man-made document which is prone to decay over time, and it's becoming like, apparent right now. Into this shifting world order steps Bitcoin, the world's first digital asset to use its own regularity of issuance and credible scarcity to guarantee base money legitimacy. I'll read this again into this shifting world order. So yeah, the world order is already shifting with or without Bitcoin because the US Constitution is protecting individual rights. But for so many reasons, like this is a complete different rabbit hole that why US political system is failing. There's this theory of psychological operations being done by USSR or by China or by just the nature of wealth. It's like two or three generations away, a human with unearned wealth will eventually not learn to value it. But that's like these are all opinions and speculations and different rabbit holes that we don't need to go into. So regardless of Bitcoin, this was happening, and now into this shifting world order, there is this element called Bitcoin, which is the world's first digital asset, and it has its regularity of issuance and credible scarcity to guarantee base money legitimacy. So the base money legitimacy currently was the SWIFT network. It was Bank of International Settlements. It was there's another institution that I'm forgetting. Yeah, but BIS holds, I think, the final authority over settlement of transactions, and SWIFT is the payment layer of those settlement. So these were the base money of the world, or is still the base money of the world. And Bitcoin is creating a system of base money, which provides legitimacy through code and cryptography. Suddenly, one of the core functions of the state appears to have been automated at the level of a global protocol. And this layer 1 money is not only absolutely scarce, but easily divisible, portable, fungible, uniform, and acceptable. All the things we love about Bitcoin. A vehicle for the purse of for the preservation and growth of value has emerged and gained adoption bottom up without seeking the imprimatur of the state. Yeah, so this the most beautiful thing. I think I mentioned this before in I might have mentioned it more than once, but I remember going to a marketing event where they asked, what is your favorite brand?" And I said, "Bitcoin is my favorite brand because without anybody pushing it, it's like not even Bitcoiners, right? It literally was a free market function. You can't say that Bitcoiners made Bitcoin. I mean, I don't take me like to my literal words. People like Hal Finney, people at the early stage of Bitcoin, were literally the people who pushed Bitcoin to what it is. But like over, I think at least after 2013, 14, Bitcoin did not rise up in price because Bitcoiners did a lot of education work. It rose in price because there were actual market actors valuing it and using it, and it was the only payment mechanism. And it's a free market, like people used it for their own reasons, for their own individual, for their own market-based reasons. And Bitcoin rose and shine and like go went through ups and downs, and is still going through ups and downs, not because of Bitcoin is educating, and this is like my bold claim. It's not because of Antonopoulos. It's not because of Michael Saylor. They are the symptom of the deeper function of the free market, which is that people will value-based money legitimacy. So yeah, it's a chicken and egg problem. Don't hold me to my exact words. That of course educators spread the message of Bitcoin, but it's a function of Bitcoin being valuable that educators do that in the first place. The Satoshi Papers invites contributions from historians, economists, political scientists, sociologists, anthropologists, political theorists, computer scientists, philosophers, and others seeking to clarify what uncensorable sound money implies for the generative relating of individual, state, and society. We ask how the automation of certain state functions impacts our understanding of the social contract, that fundamental Enlightenment era theory of just relations between state and society, and the relations between states themselves. Yeah, I was actually like Natalie mentioned this in the interview. Difference between historians and anthropologists, and it's quite nuanced. But I think my understanding of it so far is that historians cover the past essentially, and they cover what past can tell us about human society. Anthropologists cover more the socio-cultural norms of either past events or present events, of how humans come to those norms and how they decide those norms. There's this famous quote, right, that the victor of the war writes history. So whatever cultural norms we find ourselves in are not a function of us deciding and choosing those values. They are a function of us doing that, of course, but also being shaped by by the political, socioeconomic, and your local community values. And they are more day to days. Like they are very nuanced because of the communications you have with people around you. The rule of thumb is like you are the average of the 5 person you spend the most time with. So subconsciously, we value the things that people around us value. And anthropologists study that. Anthropologists focus more on that. And historians study more on the elements of how humans have come to be, how we are living, how why we are living, how the way we are living. And economists, of course, I think all of us understand. Economists are Austrian School of Economics, Keynesian School of Economics. Political science is a much broader term. It covers a lot of things. I think political theory is covers Austrian economics and economics in general, but it also covers um, yeah, sociology. I think sociology is mentioned differently. It's actually, I don't know how to define political scientists, but political science is a academic subject, and it's um, studying forms of institutions which are political. And political in itself is a very loaded word. Political means rule of people, so it itself is not a dirty word because people get to decide what rules are. Um, we can actually just quickly look up the etymology of uh, political, but I think the root word is politicos. It comes from Latin, I believe, and I think it means rule of the people. So yeah, politics is not dirty. Politics is a concept. No concept itself can be dirty. Politics etymology. Okay, it's a French word. Politique, political. Okay, via Latin from Greek politikos, from polites. Please excuse my accent. It means citizen. Okay, or city. Yeah, yeah. That's why I think this is like I think Bitcoiners do understand it. A lot of time, Bitcoiners also make this claim that politics is dirty, politics is this, politics is that. I think that's not a good argument because politics itself is a function of human nature and human behavior. It can't be dirty. Human behavior is not dirty. Human behavior is a function of human choices. Some humans make bad choices, they make ugly choices, but that itself does not make humans ugly. And Bitcoin being a apolitical money itself is a political statement. So anybody into Bitcoin is engaging in politics, whether you like it or not. Yeah. Sociologist is, I think, the father of sociology. I'm forgetting, I remember sociology being one of my favorite subjects in first year. I completely forget the name. But yeah, anthropologists I already covered. Political theorists, I think they are part of political scientists. Computer scientists, of course, and philosophers. Philosophers in Hindi is called darshan shastra, which means discovery. So philosophy, I think, yeah, I'm not going into the etymology of it, but it means something you can like palpably feel or relate to or understand. It's something that you can't deny. So when somebody says, I really believe in this or I have seen this, that's their philosophy. That becomes their way of living. And others seeking to clarify what uncensorable. Yeah, this is the property of Bitcoin, which is creating all the questions. Uncensorable sound money. It implies something for the individual, state, and society. And Natalie stresses this a lot. If you want to read the Satoshi papers, you want to understand this. It's at the intersection of individual, state, and society. And I love the framing, by the way, because I think a lot of the times, uh, I mean, I don't know, I've not like covered too much, but a lot of Bitcoiners, I wouldn't like I'm not like giving a very strong opinion, but a lot of Bitcoin has become too anti-state. Like state itself is a word. First of all, you can't like become too anti-words. So state is a institution, and state currently means government. It means that government gets to decide certain things. They make decisions for ourselves, which is of course problematic, or at least something we should think about, something we should question. But state itself, like in chemistry, like in physics, means the state of something, how it is. An individual is you, individual is you, individual is me. And society is how individuals interact with each other. Society is a emergent effect of individuals interacting with each other. We ask how the automation of certain state functions impacts our understanding. I'll actually take a pause here. I've been reading for a while. I think it's yeah, we're at 8:35. Yeah, in case somebody has any questions, anything to share, anything to ask. Hey Ravi, thanks for joining.
Hi.
Yeah, go ahead, Neo.
Uh, yeah, I believe when Natalie talks about nation state, so she was probably talking about how during the founding of America and for a long time till even like well into the 20th century, America was sort of dominated socially and politically by the vast class, which were like the Anglo-Saxons, the first people who came, basically the English, right? And now today, what you see, Hispanics and other minorities as well as other Germanic and all of these are like becoming well like a bigger part of the American culture. That is why you can see on the Republican and the Democratic side, things like Israel is becoming like pretty bad. Like, why are you giving money to Israel? Because the only people who were like in Christian denomination were like, okay, we should give money to Israel, were the wasps, because in their Bible it is written that the Jews are the chosen people, and which is Israel, and you should protect it. So that is why they were giving money. That was the basis of it. And now the political influence is waning. I think that is what she's talking about in America. And also everywhere, even in Europe, most of the European states were made for like specific ethnicities of people. And because of migration and refugees and all, even so the entire makeup is changing, right? Demographic makeup. So
Right.
people are like, yeah, it's all going
Right.
to yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think yeah, this is the study of history and anthropology, and this is by the way, like this is a personal anecdote. This has fascinated me way before Bitcoin. Way before Bitcoin, I remember just watching some documentaries and like general reading stuff. Anthropology and history has always fascinated me. I've never like been too much of a reader. I think I want to be reading more books, history books for sure. But I
Me neither.
remember
Uh,
no, you were the one who sent me like the list of 20 books of I think a lot of books,
yeah,
right? History, economy.
yeah, I did.
Right. Yeah, I think in the Bitcoin ecosystem, you, Sachin, and yeah, who else? I think you and Sachin definitely, I think, are the most voracious
Apollo.
readers, and yeah,
Apollo.
Apanuk as well. I've
Yeah.
yeah, spoken to Apanuk a lot about the books he's read. But yeah, I think yeah, voracious reading is it's like it almost feels like a magical spell when you start reading a lot. So yeah, I have yet to do a lot of like just the Bitcoiner lens to it as well. I think has changed how I read, how I think, how I look at things. Yeah, but I think the Wednesday reading and writing club, that's the goal where they were able to produce content which is necessary for India specifically. Most of the Bitshala participants are Indians. In case somebody, I don't know who else has joined, in case someone is not Indian, I think everyone is Indian. Yeah, of course, Bitshala is not specifically focused. Like anyway, this club is not necessarily always about Bitshala. It's about how you interact, how you add value, and how you learn things. So yeah, the point of I think reading and writing is delivering value to first yourself and then to those around you who you value. That could be a local community, that could be a city, that could be a whole country, or even the whole world, whatever your identity of impact is, whether that's yourself, whether that's the whole world, that's for you to decide. But yeah, I think voracious reading, the more I've started doing it, it almost feels addictive. It feels that it's like a magical spell that changes how you experience everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, uh, I'll read this line again. I don't know if I read this. We ask how the automation of certain state functions impacts our understanding of the social contract, that fundamental Enlightenment era theory. of just relations between state and society and the relations between states themselves. Right. Yeah, the Enlightenment era, I think, refers to the period of scientific renaissance where the printing press, one invention, was a paradigm shift in how humans think, how humans do experiments, how they interact with each other. And yeah, there's a lot of parallels between printing press and Bitcoin because printing press created democratization of language itself, and Bitcoin is creating democratization of language of value specifically. Like language of value itself is such a deep rabbit hole. It's like when you like meditation itself is an exercise of searching for value within yourself. So when you do that, it becomes infinite because anybody who is searching for value within themselves or within outside of themselves, like greater than their own individual desires, uh, comes to, I think, understanding that it's infinite. It's not something that you just know and just like you do away. It's an infinite experience. So yeah, I think Enlightenment era, we're going through another one of those eras where humans are waking up to a lot of things, not just Bitcoin. The Satoshi papers are works of political theory, not policy. Yeah, this paragraph is very interesting. I'll actually like read this first. Uh, yeah, the Satoshi papers are works of political theory, not policy. In times of crisis and upheaval, when the terms through which the world has been understood are actively shifting, the first imperative is to think. What is clear is that all the conceptual pieces are not already on the table. We invite you to think so that we may together clarify what is at stake and what distinctions will enable us to skillfully navigate this era of profound transition. Yeah. Yeah, I'll just recommend this to read on your own as well. This paragraph was very interesting to me. And like I'll share a bit of a tangential anecdote. This is a bit of a controversial opinion, but I also think it's true. So it's not controversial if someone like is patient enough to listen to it. So like Carl Jung has his own theory of how women act on instincts, which men sometimes uh, will are more inclined to look at as very innocent, and when women do not act how men think, they think that women are malicious or they are liars, which is actually not true because they are acting on their instinct. And a woman's instinct is to survive and preserve herself. At least comparatively, in contrast to men, it's stronger. So most men start to think that they are lying or they are like not acting uh, correctly or wisely. But and why I'm mentioning this is because when you understand humans from that lens of anthropology or like a very deep element of what makes a human human, you don't look at like somebody as bad or good. I think that starts to break down because that's too simplistic. Of course, people make bad decisions, people are malicious, but why they do that and how are systems influencing that is a better question because I think on a deep level, there are rarely humans who actively wake up every day and want to destroy the world. If they do that, there is something disturbing within them. It's not like their choice to want to do that. Questions animating the Satoshi paper. Yeah, these are the list of questions that we'll cover now. I think we are at 8:42. So yeah, the rest of the sessions will be covering these questions and just pondering over them. Yeah, anyone feel free to share their thoughts on any of these questions. And yeah, we will not read selection criteria. If you want to read that, please read that on your own. But yeah, this book seems to me very interesting, and I think Natalie, yeah, I watched her interviews. I'll like probably read more of her stuff, but she seems very thorough with her research and very serious about how she's approaching things. And anybody in Bitcoin who's a public figure who's talking about controversial, sensitive subjects needs to be very rigorous in their analysis and uh, yeah, in their opinions. Questions animating the Satoshi papers. Some of the research questions to be taken up in contributions to the Satoshi papers might include what is an optimal form of government, for whom, at what scale, why, and what role does Bitcoin play in that form of government? So I thought of like the first thing that came to my mind when I read this question and thought about it is the Dunbar's number. So any organization, any human being, forget an organization, can only keep a tab of so many humans. So think of like yourself, like your phone book. You might have like hundreds of contacts, but at like on a human level, you can't interact with more than 5, 10, 20, maybe 50 people. And you create systems eventually. You don't like interact with all of them. You create systems of interaction with people. And Uh, there are theories which say that this could be a function of the fiat system where humans don't have time to interact with other humans, so they end up like creating their social circle so small. But that's like a different, like a very different question. But humans have limitations, regardless of whether we are on the Bitcoin standard or fiat standard. And optimal form of government is a very important question in my opinion because uh, yeah, I've said this many times. Saying that the government is evil or government is slavery is too simplistic, and it makes up for fun memes, but it's not a good rigorous analysis of government itself. Uh, yeah, a very controversial subject, but I'll just leave it at that. What role will Bitcoin play in the 21st century international financial system? Yeah, these are questions that MicroStrategy, MetaPlanet, and Tuesday and TradFi Club are actively discussing, actively figuring out how Bitcoin changes finance like a Trojan horse. Like Bitcoin is like a fish that has came into the sea and like changing everything. So finance, Bitcoin was created outside of finance, right? Satoshi literally sacrificed himself so that the finance guys don't come after him. But somehow this Bitcoin thing has like changed finance internally, where companies which were hotel companies are now becoming Bitcoin treasury companies. How does Bitcoin's adoption limit and or enable new expressions of state power? Yeah, this is, I don't know if I can quote Saurabh on this. I'll actually take the liberty. Saurabh, please feel free to stop me if I'm. But as Saurabh actually said this very beautiful thing, I was discussing this with him, that the core principle of Bitcoin is separation of state and money. He said that he disagrees. He says that Bitcoin is state. So that's, this question is like an expression, very similar expression that yeah, Bitcoin enables new expressions of state power. What effects will an absolutely scarce currency have on the practice of war? This is the most pressing question of uh, yeah, of the era, because yeah, war is a very sensitive subject, and currently the world is going through sensitive times, and Bitcoin has its role. Bitcoin has played the role in Ukraine and Russia war. I'm pretty sure it's played a role in the Israel-Palestine conflict, and it's playing a role in U.S. China trade war, in Russia creating its own mining pool. And I think we were discussing this before we started reading, that more and more countries will want to own hash rate. It's literally called Hash Wars or Soft War by Jason Lowry, uh, about the idea of more and more nations wanting to have the ability to create and broadcast and get their transaction confirmed without relying on any other state. So currently, more than 70% of mining is concentrated in US, which is not a good sign for Bitcoin overall, but it's especially a bad sign for any other country other than US, because very similar to the US dollar system, they can be uh, because of sheer probability be censored from using Bitcoin. Can Bitcoin help societies forge a path towards optimal forms of relating between elites and non-elites? Very interesting question. I think very deep, interesting question, because I think humans have jealousy and envy. That's the nature of humanity, but they don't necessarily have hate, because it's also said that hate and, like, this is like a poetic thing, that love and hate are the two sides of the same coin. And I strongly believe that, because whenever you hate someone strongly, there is an element of investment of emotions in you. When you hate someone, you are investing your energy in that person or in that idea or whatever. So it is clearly worth your energy. So it's clearly something that you value enough to give a lot of your energy to. So I don't think envy between humans is actually a function of differences. When you look at a better person or whatever, it's like whatever humans have envy with, it's actually a function of not being able to relate to it and being so distant to it. That's what is the graver problem. And yeah, it's a complete paradigm shift. But Bitcoin, uh, it's a complete paradigm shift to even think about these ideas. But Bitcoin helps with that, because only the people who are adding value will be elites on the Bitcoin standard. And when you have people who are adding value as elites, you can't envy them, because you can take inspiration from them. They can like be the lesson in your life to be better, to be more valuable. So the relationship between elites and non-elites will change profoundly. Yeah. However, so yeah, currently the problem is the cantilever effect. It's not like differences between poor and rich. It's the difference between cantilenaires and non-cantilenaires. And the distinction is critical, because cantilenaires get cheap credit. Whatever is cheap, people get it if they're getting it for cheap, if they're getting the same thing for cheap. So it's literally destroying the basic function of demand and supply. which creates this problem between elites. Like even the word elite has become so controversial right now. How are natural rights, particularly rights to liberty and property, being reconceptualized in the light of Bitcoin? Yeah, this is again fascinating question. What implications do these rights have for state-society relations? Yeah. The principle of independence in central banking was intended to bring fiscal accountability to polities and base money legitimacy to their currencies. Bitcoin's primary purpose is to use its known regularity of issuance and credible scarcity to ensure that monetary policy's bedrock state is hindered in preserving the value of money. With this foundational mission of independent central banking now automated and public confidence in it growing every year, does there remain a social function for central banking? What public good can now gain attention among bankers? Yeah. So I think this is the key word, public confidence. We are seeing it's very interesting times. Bitcoin Core is going through its own controversies, but we are seeing more public confidence in Bitcoin with every year. And yeah, it well brings into question the social function of central banking itself, which no other institution, no other idea has ever made us think. It's like an elephant in the room metaphor, right? The central banking was always there, everybody's aware about it. Nobody questions what its role is. What public good can now gain attention among bankers? Yeah, I don't understand this question actually. What public good can now gain attention among bankers? Yeah, anyway. Yeah, this is a very interesting passage. This one especially. Proof of work is an independent money creating institution comparable to an independent central banking. How does the automation of the money issuance aspect of central banking change the mission and methods of commercial and retail banking when it comes to credit, market making, underwriting, bond issuance, and the like? Yeah, I think yesterday in the TradFi session, there were very interesting discussions. A lot of it was new to me. So yeah, these are like concepts which are getting uh, redefined because of Bitcoin. Yeah, for legal stories as well, which are corporations. So for them as well, Bitcoin becoming a treasury reserve asset are helping them create different instruments for uh, different categories of investors. What does the future hold for new forms of currency in a world of unforgeably scarce, programmable based money? For example, what are the types of policies and projects enabled by locally circulating Chaumian eCash that is verifiably rooted in a Bitcoin vault? What kinds of political autonomy might result at different scales? At what point and in what ways would a network of vault participants become an opt in political project? Yeah, yeah, something to think about. Read and think about this on your own. I will not expand on this. How will Bitcoin mining and network maintenance impact global energy production, usage, availability, and the shift to more abundant and/or renewable sources? What effects will this have on global political economy? Yeah, these are some of the brain melting statements for newcomers to Bitcoin. Even for me at this point, like very, it takes a lot of time to grok it. How will Bitcoin mining and network maintenance impact global energy production, usage, and availability, and the shift to more abundant and renewable sources? So, as nuclear energy becomes more deployable, cheaper, accessible, Bitcoin mining and overall global energy production will transform itself. And Gridless, the company, is doing amazing work in that direction, where they are using stranded energy in different places of Africa and monetizing that energy thanks to Bitcoin because it requires minimal infrastructure to start a mining rig. And through that, they are able to produce more energy because they're able to justify the economics of it and provide energy to the nearby villages, create hospitals, and essentially create a new civilization in a place which previously it was not possible. There is a great article by Brandon Quittem which says Bitcoin is a civilizational species, which talks about how it's a seed. Bitcoin mining is a civilization species. So it will be a seed wherever there is cheap energy, or even if there's no cheap energy, nuclear modular reactors are being able to produce energy uh, without. Yeah, I don't know what goes into the infrastructure of it, but I know that it's becoming more and more deployable at remote places. Yeah, and creating industries and civilizations in places where it was impossible. We are at 8:54. Yeah, we will read this question. We will actually stop at 9 or maybe 9:05. In addition to taking up these more general topics, In addition to taking up these more general topics, essays will also focus on Bitcoin's implication for American political economy, specifically like the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers. These questions may include significant normative or prescriptive components. Yeah, so this is all these questions were mainly political questions and global questions, but the following questions are more to do with US, and it's important for everybody to understand because whatever happens in the US because of game theory and because of the reality of geopolitics has an influence on the entire world. What does a more perfect union look like and why? How does Bitcoin prompt us to rethink the structures of Enlightenment era government that the United States has inherited? How should these structures evolve? This is a very deep question, PhD topic on itself. What role might Bitcoin play in the evolution of relationships between the US states and between states and the federal government? Yeah. This is the Satoshi Action Fund and Bitcoin Policy Institute conflict. It's a healthy debate, it's a healthy conflict. What projects and outcomes might Bitcoin enable at the federal, state, and local levels that are either not possible or difficult to achieve without it? What role, if any, does Bitcoin play in furthering financial inclusion and wealth creation among historically marginalized populations? This is a very interesting question because how Bitcoin and like Chowmin, eCash, and whatever enable local economies to thrive is a very fascinating concept because historically it was not possible for them to use anything as money other than whatever was imposed on them. But Bitcoin helps you to entirely create a new system for yourself. So a lot of marginalized populations will be able to like completely circumvent because they won't have any inertia. They can literally like start a new economic life without even anybody realizing it, and that's the power because they can now contribute to the digital economy. Uh, yeah, without even ID, right? They just need internet connection, and it's a tricky thing, of course, for someone to be able to have internet access. But there are more and more projects in Bitcoin which are attempting to solve that problem. Should the United States continue to strive to be a global superpower? What does being a superpower mean in a multipolar world? Very interesting. Should the United States seek to preserve the US dollar status as the global reserve currency? What are the implications for domestic policy? How do non-state programmable bearer instrument (BTC) and state-sponsored fiat bills or bonds interact optimally for the American people? Is there a future for non-programmable reserve assets, gold, or are these collapsing into strategic reserves more generally, oil, helium, etc.? So reserve assets and strategic reserves. I don't know what's the categorical difference between them, but I think strategic reserves are more to do with nation state uh, and ah yeah, I don't know. I'm not actually sure of how they are different. But yeah, in a world where Bitcoin is becoming more and more, the entire uh, value prop of gold is being questioned. But yeah, here we have 3 minutes left. What I think we can do is we can like go over one of the questions or just perhaps understand Satoshi papers a bit more. Yeah, Natalie Smolinski, she's written this book toward an anthropological theory of Andrew Bailey is another prolific writer and researcher. He's written a book what Satoshi did. I don't know anyone else among these. Vic Roy, I think I've heard their names and they fight you. At least Smolensky has also written. Peer to peer is a human right. This question is a very pertinent question, not just in India, but all over the world.